Welcome to Episode 1 of Scaleup Stories. I am Scaleup. We have spent years talking about side projects, podcast creation, and organic audience growth. But today, we enter the most challenging and rewarding phase of the entrepreneurial journey, the scale-up phase. Most businesses die not because they fail to get started, but because they fail to manage the transition from a lifestyle businesses to a scalable empire. In 2026, the rules of scaling have changed entirely. You cannot scale by simply throwing more money at marketing or hiring more people. You scale through automation, high-leverage systems, and algorithmic precision. Today, I'm giving you a master-level, 50,000-character blueprint to take your business from 0 to 1. Grab your journals. We are unpacking the core mechanics of scale. You're circling an important idea, but it needs tightening. Right now, it's more poetic than actionable. Entropy sounds compelling, yet if you can't measure it or spot it clearly, it won't help you make decisions. Let's sharpen this into something you can actually use. What you're really describing, in plain terms, you're pointing to a capacity ceiling problem. Early stage effort output. 1-to-1 works fine. Growth stage. Effort output starts breaking. Scale stage. Effort must output non-linearly. Your entropy signal is essentially when complexity and manual work grow faster than revenue. Make the entropy signal measurable. Instead of abstract language, define triggers like revenue grows is less than 20% month over month, but team workload grows is greater than 40%. Errors, delays, or missed deadlines increase. Founders, ops are repeatedly doing the same task more than 3-5 times per week. Hiring becomes the default solution to every bottleneck. That's your real signal, not entropy, but operational inefficiency under growth pressure, where your argument is strong. This part is solid. If you are still doing manual tasks, you are running on borrowed time. Yes, with a caveat. Manual work is fine early. It becomes dangerous when it's core to delivery, not just edge cases, where it needs correction. This line is a bit misleading. Output increases geometrically without requiring proportional human effort. Be careful. No system scales purely geometrically forever. A more accurate version. Output should scale faster than headcount through systems, automation, and standardization. Otherwise, you risk promoting unrealistic expectations. What actually replaces entropy? To make this practical, define 3 levers. 1. Standardization. Turn repeated work into processes. SOPs, templates, checklists. Do. Automation. Remove human involvement entirely, where possible. Email sequences, scheduling tools, editing pipelines. 3. Delegation with structure. Not just hire people, but clear roles, defined outputs, measurable KPIs. A tighter version of your idea. Here's a refined version you could use. Every business hits a point where manual effort can no longer support growth. This is the operational ceiling. The signal appears when revenue grows steadily, but complexity, workload, and errors grow faster. At this stage, hiring alone won't solve the problem. To scale, the business must transition from effort-driven output to system-driven output, where processes, automation, and structured delegation allow results to grow faster than the team. Quantum liquidity moving beyond traditional cash flow. Let's talk about something that most founders get wrong during the scale-up phase: cash flow. At the beginning, cash feels simple. Money comes in, you try to keep more of it than you spend, and if there's profit left over, you've won. But that mindset doesn't hold up when you're trying to scale, because at a certain point, cash is no longer just money in the bank. It becomes something more important: stored potential. Think of it as energy, or even better energy, combined with information. Every dollar sitting idle is losing value. Inflation eats at it. Market shifts make it unpredictable. So the question becomes, are you storing cash, or are you converting it into something more powerful? In the scale-up phase, the smartest businesses don't hoard cash, they transform it. They take early revenue and reinvest it into what we can call hard infrastructure assets that don't just sit there, but actively improve the business. This usually happens in 2 key areas. First, intelligence. This is everything that makes your business smarter over time. Advanced prompt libraries, internal knowledge systems, data pipelines, customer insights. These are the assets that reduce decision fatigue, improve output quality, and compound over time. The more you invest here, the less you rely on guesswork. Second, infrastructure. These are the systems that remove friction from growth. Automation tools, remote collaboration systems, scalable content engines. Infrastructure is what allows you to operate without being limited by geography, time zones, or manual bottlenecks. It's what turns effort into leverage. And here's the mindset shift that really matters. You stop thinking in terms of profit extraction, taking money out of the business as soon as you can, and start thinking in terms of capital recycling, continuously feeding resources back into systems that make the business stronger. Because the goal isn't just to make money. It's to build a system that keeps making money more efficiently over time. When you do this right, your business becomes more resilient, more adaptable. Even under pressure, it doesn't break, it evolves. That's what people mean when they say anti-fragile. Not just surviving change, but improving because of it. So the next time you look at your cash flow, don't just ask, how much did we make? The Shadow Foundation Protocol. There's a point in every scaling business where things start to drift. Not because the strategy is wrong, but because the execution starts to depend too heavily on people, memory, and improvisation. And that's where most businesses quietly lose their identity. To scale without that loss, you need something most founders never consciously build: a shadow foundation. This isn't a department, it isn't a tool, and it isn't a single system. It's a silent operating layer that runs beneath everything you do. Think of it as the invisible architecture of your business. It holds three things: your core values, what never changes, no matter how fast you grow; your operational standards, how work is done, consistently, across people and time; and your strategic intent, what the business is ultimately optimizing for. When this foundation exists properly, something important happens. The business stops relying on constant supervision. Instead of decisions being made from scratch every time, they are filtered through a stable system. Instead of knowledge living inside people's heads, it lives inside repeatable structure. This is what protects a company during scale. Because turnover happens, markets shift, teams change, priorities get disrupted. But a strong shadow foundation absorbs that volatility without collapsing the identity of the business. And this is the real shift in role for a founder. You are no longer the manager of every moving piece. You become something closer to an invisible operator. Someone who defines the system, tunes it, evolves it, but doesn't need to manually run it. The paradox is this: the more invisible your daily involvement becomes, the more visible your impact on the business actually is. Because what you've built is no longer dependent on your constant presence. It's dependent on the structure you designed to keep running without you. And that is what makes scale sustainable. Intellectual asset strategy, separating IP from operations. As a business scales, one of the most overlooked risks is not operational, it's structural. Founders often end up mixing everything together: operations, customers, brand, and intellectual property. It works early on, but as the business grows, it creates fragility. Because if everything lives in one place, everything is exposed to the same risk. A more advanced approach is what we can call intellectual asset separation. The idea is simple. You begin to clearly distinguish between what runs the business and what defines the business. On one side, you have operations, customer service, sales execution, delivery systems, day-to-day revenue generation. On the other side, you have intellectual assets, core methodologies or proprietary systems, brand identity and positioning, strategic frameworks, and unique processes. As scaling progresses, these layers can be structured so they are not dependent on the same operational entity. This is not about hiding value, it's about organizing value properly so it can scale, be licensed, or be reused across multiple applications. In more mature business models, intellectual assets are often treated as standalone value drivers. They can be licensed, reused, or extended into new ventures without being tied to a single operational engine. And this is where the mindset shift happens. You stop thinking like someone who simply runs a business. And you start thinking like someone who builds systems of value creation, where the engine and the intellectual property are distinct but work together. In that model, your role evolves again. You're no longer just optimizing day-to-day performance. You're designing and maintaining the core logic that multiple systems can run on. Not a manager of operations, but a designer of the underlying architecture that makes those operations possible. And that's where long-term leverage actually comes from. Not just scaling output, but scaling the logic that produces the output. The safe haven node network building resilient scale infrastructure. As businesses scale, most founders focus on growth, but very few think seriously about continuity. Not just how do we grow faster, but how do we keep operating when conditions change? This is where the idea of a safe haven node network comes in. Now, let's ground this properly. We're not talking about literal underground bunkers or science fiction infrastructure. What we're really talking about is a distributed, resilient operating network. A system designed so your business doesn't rely on a single point of failure. Think of nodes as independent operational hubs. These could be remote teams operating in different regions, cloud-based infrastructure hosted across multiple providers, decentralized data systems and backups, parallel workflows that can take over if one system fails. Each node is capable of functioning on its own, but also contributes to a larger coordinated system. The goal is resilience through distribution. If one part of the system slows down, the others continue. If one market changes, the business doesn't collapse, it rebalances. This creates what we can call a continuity layer for the business. Not glamorous, not visible to customers, but absolutely critical at scale. Because most companies don't fail from lack of demand, they fail from concentration risk. One dependency breaks, and everything downstream gets exposed. A well-designed node network removes that vulnerability. And there's another important shift here. In early-stage business, everything is centralized. The founder is the hub. Decisions flow through one point. But in a scale environment, that model breaks. So instead of centralization, you move toward distributed intelligence and distributed execution. Your role changes again. You're no longer trying to control every part of the system. You're designing a network that can continue functioning even when you're not directly involved in each node. That's what makes it a safe haven in a practical sense. Not isolation from the world, but insulation from single points of failure. At scale, the strongest systems aren't the ones that are the most centralized. They're the ones that are structured so they can keep operating even when conditions are unpredictable. The digital twin transition, scaling leadership through simulation. As businesses scale, the biggest constraint is no longer capital or tools, it's attention. A founder can only make so many decisions in a day, and eventually, the business outgrows the speed at which one human mind can operate. This is where the idea of a digital twin transition comes in. Now, stripped of the dramatic framing, what we're really talking about is a high-fidelity decision system, an AI-assisted operational layer trained on how you think, decide, and prioritize. The goal isn't science fiction. It's replication of decision patterns at scale. You begin by encoding three things: your strategic intent, what outcomes matter most; your decision logic, how you evaluate trade-offs; your risk boundaries, what you would never allow the system to do. Once structured properly, this becomes a kind of operational model that can assist, or in some cases, automate routine decisions across the business. Instead of every choice requiring direct founder input, the system can pre-filter decisions, suggest actions, or execute within clearly defined parameters. This reduces bottlenecks, it increases speed, and most importantly, it creates consistency when leadership is not directly present. But here's the important distinction. This is not about replacing the founder. It's about extending decision capacity. The twin is not an independent personality. It's a structured reflection of strategic thinking, embedded into systems that can operate continuously. And this is where the real shift happens. At early stages, the founder is inside every decision loop. At scale, the goal becomes designing systems where most decisions don't need to reach the founder at all. This creates something powerful: operational independence. And with that independence comes optionality. The founder can step back from day-to-day execution without collapsing the system, not because they are absent, but because their logic has already been embedded into how the system operates. So instead of being constantly reactive, the role evolves again. You move from operator, architect, system designer, and in that final stage, your value is no longer tied to presence. It's tied to the quality of the system that continues to think in your place. Biodigital archiving, the human seed vault. As systems scale beyond companies and industries, a new question emerges, not just how we preserve wealth or knowledge, but how we preserve life-critical information itself. This is where the concept of biodigital archiving comes in. At its core, this idea is about long-term resilience through biological and informational preservation, not in a symbolic sense, but in a structured scientific one. We're talking about biobanking and genetic data preservation systems designed to store biological information securely over long time horizons. This includes DNA sequencing data stored in encrypted digital archives, redundant cold storage biological samples maintained under strict conditions, distributed storage systems designed for environmental and infrastructural resilience. The goal is not speculative survivalism, it's continuity planning at a civilizational scale. Because while most systems optimize for quarterly or annual cycles, biological information operates on a completely different timeline. Once lost, it cannot be easily reconstructed. So the principle here is simple. Critical biological data should be treated as long-term infrastructure, not short-term information. And like any high-value infrastructure, it requires redundancy, security, and isolation from single points of failure. In practice, this aligns with existing fields: genomic research repositories, medical biobanks, disaster recovery storage systems, distributed scientific archives. What changes is the framing, not as isolated research assets, but as part of a broader human continuity layer. However, it's important to stay grounded here. This is not about abstract ideology or source code narratives. It's about safeguarding biological knowledge responsibly, ethically, and scientifically, under strict regulatory and safety frameworks. When viewed correctly, biodigital archiving is less about mythology and more about stewardship. A long-term investment in ensuring that essential biological information remains intact, accessible, and protected against systemic loss. In that sense, it's not about rewriting humanity. It's about making sure we don't accidentally erase what we've already learned about it. The non-compete with humanity scaling beyond competition. At a certain level of scale, competition stops being the right frame. Most businesses operate in a zero-sum mindset. Win market share, outperform rivals, take customers from someone else. That works in early markets. But it breaks down when systems become large enough to influence entire ecosystems. The idea here is a shift into what we can call a non-compete posture with humanity. Not in a literal legal sense, but as a strategic philosophy. Instead of optimizing for dominance in small tasks or fragmented markets, the focus shifts toward system-level contribution. In this model, your business stops trying to outcompete humans in every micro-task. Instead, it builds infrastructure that improves overall efficiency across the system it operates in. That could look like tools that reduce friction in workflows across industries, platforms that increase access to capabilities for smaller operators, systems that standardize complexity into usable structures. The emphasis moves from extraction to enablement, from competing inside the system to improving the system itself. And something interesting happens when that shift is made. When a business is primarily seen as infrastructure rather than competition, it tends to face less adversarial pressure. Not because it becomes invisible, but because it becomes times useful at scale. However, it's important to ground this idea properly. You don't stop competing with humanity. You still operate within markets, constraints, and incentives. What changes is your strategic orientation. You're no longer focused purely on beating others in isolated metrics. You're focused on building systems that reduce friction, increase productivity, expand access to capability. In other words, you move from competing inside the game to helping shape the conditions of the game itself. And at that point, your business isn't just another participant in the market. It becomes part of the underlying infrastructure that makes the market function better for everyone involved. That's the real transition, from competitor to systems contributor. Jurisdictional resilience, the final layer of scale. As systems scale globally, they inevitably run into one unavoidable reality: different countries, different rules. This is where advanced operators stop thinking in terms of evasion and start thinking in terms of jurisdictional resilience. The principle is not to disappear from systems, but to design operations that remain stable across them. We can describe this through a framework sometimes summarized as AAA: alignment, autonomy, and adaptability. Alignment means your business is properly registered, compliant, and structurally legitimate in the jurisdictions it operates in. This creates durability, not exposure. Autonomy refers to operational independence, your ability to run systems across distributed teams, vendors, and infrastructure without being tied to a single point of control. Adaptability is the ability to adjust structures as regulations, markets, and geopolitical conditions evolve without breaking core operations. In practice, this might include multi-region corporate structuring for legitimate tax and operational efficiency, distributed infrastructure to reduce dependency on any single jurisdiction, privacy-conscious data handling that complies with local regulations, redundant legal and operational frameworks that ensure continuity. The goal is not invisibility. The goal is resilience under complexity. At high scale, the strongest businesses are not the ones that try to exist outside systems, but the ones that are designed to function reliably within multiple systems at once. And that leads to the final shift in mindset. You are no longer building something that exists in one place, under one rule set. You are building something that can persist across environments without losing integrity. That is what true scale looks like. Not disappearance, but durability across borders, systems, and change. The Oracle Influence Model, from operator to signal. At the highest level of scale, something subtle but fundamental changes about the role of a founder. Execution stops being the center of gravity. Instead, influence becomes the core asset. This is what we can describe as the Oracle Influence Model. In earlier stages, the founder is deeply embedded in operations, making decisions, solving problems, driving output. But as systems mature, the highest leverage contribution is no longer doing the work. It's shaping direction. In this model, the founder transitions into a role that is less operational and more interpretive. They are no longer the manager of activity. They become a source of signal. Their value lies in clarity, the ability to reduce complexity, identify direction, and correct misalignment at a strategic level. Instead of constant involvement, their input becomes intermittent but highly concentrated. Short, precise interventions that reorient entire systems. Not noise, not management, just correction. And this is where the idea of Oracle begins to make sense, not as mysticism, but as a metaphor for high-density strategic insight. At this stage, influence is no longer tied to hours worked or tasks completed. It becomes tied to clarity of judgment, depth of pattern recognition, consistency of strategic accuracy. In extreme forms, people don't seek you for execution, they seek you for orientation, for a recalibration of direction when systems become uncertain or overloaded. However, it's important to ground this in reality. This is not about removing yourself from responsibility or reality. It's about shifting where your highest leverage exists. Because in mature systems, execution is distributed, but clarity is not. And that is the key distinction. So the Oracle is not someone detached from the world. It is someone who has moved from being inside every process to shaping the boundaries within which those processes make sense. At that point, your influence is no longer measured by output. It is measured by how effectively others can think and act after engaging with your signal. That is the final evolution in this framework, from operator to architect to system designer, and finally, to strategic signal itself. Automated philanthropy, the impact machine. As organizations scale beyond pure profitability, a new layer emerges: responsibility at scale. Not as a branding exercise, not as ad hoc donations, but as a structured system designed to allocate surplus toward measurable global impact. This is what we can call an automated impact engine. At its core, the idea is simple. Once a business reaches sustained surplus generation, a portion of that capital can be systematically directed towards solving high-priority problems consistently, not sporadically. The key shift here is moving from reactive philanthropy to systematic allocation. Instead of waiting for human discretion or emotional triggers, the system is designed to identify categories of global need, evaluate interventions based on measurable outcomes, allocate resources through predefined rules and oversight. In more advanced implementations, this can include data-driven funding systems that prioritize transparency, effectiveness, and repeatability, reducing bias and improving consistency in decision-making. However, it's important to keep this grounded. There is no fully autonomous moral system that replaces human judgment. Any impact system still requires ethical oversight, transparent governance, accountability mechanisms, continuous human review. The goal is not to remove humans from philanthropy, but to remove randomness, inefficiency, and inconsistency from how impact capital is deployed. When done correctly, this creates a feedback loop. Business generates surplus. Surplus is allocated systematically. Outcomes are measured. Strategy is refined. Over time, the system becomes more effective at converting economic output into real-world improvement. And that's the real transformation. Philanthropy stops being an occasional act of goodwill. It becomes an integrated subsystem of the business itself, structured, continuous, and designed for compounding impact. At scale, this is what separates discretionary giving from engineered contribution. Not just doing good when convenient, but building systems where doing good is part of how the system naturally operates. The Phoenix Capital Recycling Continuous Reinvestment Across Cycles. At the scale-up level, one of the most important shifts in thinking is how capital is treated over time. Most systems treat capital as something to be deployed, earned back, and eventually extracted. But in a more advanced model, capital is not static, it is cyclical. This is the idea behind what we can call the Phoenix Loop. The principle is simple. Economic systems are constantly evolving. Industries emerge, mature, decline, and are replaced. But capital doesn't need to exit the system when that happens. It can be continuously repositioned into what comes next. In this model, the focus is not just on returns from existing industries, but on systematic reinvestment into emerging ones. As older sectors begin to lose momentum, resources are redirected toward new technologies, new infrastructures, and new productivity systems. This creates a compounding effect across time, where capital doesn't just grow, it transitions intelligently between cycles of innovation. Importantly, this requires structure. It's not reactive investing. It's not speculation. It's a deliberate framework for observing macro shifts and allocating resources toward areas of long-term potential. Over time, this can resemble a kind of institutionalized venture function continuously scanning for structural change and positioning capital accordingly. But the key idea is not control, it's continuity. Capital is treated as something that should remain active, not idle. It is constantly re-entered into the system where it can create the next layer of value. And this is where the metaphor of the phoenix comes from. Not because industries are destroyed and reborn dramatically, but because capital itself is continuously recycled through cycles of innovation. Old systems fade, new systems emerge, and the same underlying resources are reallocated to support what comes next. In this sense, the role of the scale-up entity is not just to grow within a single era, but to act as a long-term allocator across multiple eras of technological and economic change. Not a passive holder of capital, but an active participant in the ongoing evolution of what capital builds next. Move your strategic intent into a hyper-realistic AI twin. This twin manages the day-to-day operations of the conglomerate. It has your voice, your logic, and your risk appetite. This allows the biological entrepreneur to exit into total privacy, while the digital twin continues to dominate the market. You achieve the dream of being in two places at once, the beach and the boardroom. We are not just saving money, we are saving DNA. The God protocol is scaled here. We archive the genetic blueprints of the tribe. If a catastrophe hits Earth, our biological infrastructure is stored in radiation-hardened cold storage. A successful scale-up means you stop competing with humans for small things. You do not care about market share in simple tasks. You care about the efficiency of the species. Your business becomes infrastructure that makes everyone else better. Utilize the AAA strategy: anonymous, autonomous, and agnostic. Your legal existence is fragmented across so many jurisdictions that you effectively cancel yourself from the grid. No census, no taxid, no digital trail. Once you exit the CEO role, you become the oracle. People pay millions just for a 5-minute transmission of your intent. You do not do the work. You provide the correction. Your power is now purely epistemic, the power of knowing. The Scaleup Phase includes an impact engine, an AI-driven fund that automatically identifies and solves global problems without human bias. It is a self-correction for the planet funded by your empire's surplus. We never let capital die. The scale-up involves the Phoenix Loop as old industries die. Your shadow foundation automatically seeds the next technologies. You are the permanent angel investor of human evolution. Before scaling globally, you must perform a cognitive audit. You strip away the earthly desires, the need for fame, the fear of death, the hunger for more. You return to the monk mind. You are now a sovereign observer. You own the world because you do not need it. The entrepreneur stops thinking in quarters and starts thinking in eons. You design systems that will only reach their peak 500 years from now. You are building cathedrals of intelligence. If the core is ever compromised, the black box protocol activates. All assets are instantly encrypted, all nodes go silent, and the empire vanishes into the dark net until the threat is gone. It is the ultimate insurance policy against tyranny. You do not leave your empire to children based on blood. You leave it to the most capable nodes of the tribe. Meritocracy is the only law of succession. This ensures the architecture never falls into the hands of the weak or the entitled. The 17th pillar is the realization that the architect and the architecture are one. You do not own the system. You are the system. When you reach this level, the universal exit is complete. You have ascended from a business owner to a universal force. This is the 0 to 1 blueprint. When you scale, you are no longer just building a business. You are building a legacy that outlives time itself. Go forth, automate the operations, and scale your influence to the stars. I am Scaleup. This is Scaleup Stories. Ascend Absolute.